What if everything you've been taught about human civilization is completely wrong? What if we're not the first intelligent species to call Earth home, but merely the latest chapter in a story that spans millions, perhaps billions of years? Right now, as you're watching this video, there's mounting evidence that suggests something extraordinary. We might be living on a planet that has hosted multiple advanced civilizations long before humans ever existed. Stay with me on this mind-bending exploration as we dive deep into the Panspermia Hypothesis and uncover evidence that could shatter our understanding of life on Earth forever. Because what I'm about to show you will make you question everything you thought you knew about our planet's history and our place in the cosmic timeline. Before we go any further, let me be crystal clear about something. This isn't just another conspiracy theory video. What we're discussing today is backed by legitimate scientific research, peer-reviewed studies, and discoveries that are forcing mainstream science to reconsider fundamental assumptions about life, intelligence, and planetary evolution. The implications are staggering, and by the end of this investigation, you'll understand why some of the world's leading scientists are quietly admitting that we might not be alone on this planet, and we might never have been. But first, let me give you some context about why this matters so much right now. In the past decade alone, we've made discoveries that would have been considered impossible just 50 years ago. We've found evidence of liquid water on Mars, organic compounds in the atmospheres of distant planets, and most importantly, we've discovered that life on Earth might be far, far older than we ever imagined. These aren't isolated findings. They're pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, paint a picture so extraordinary that it challenges the very foundation of how we understand life itself. The Panspermia Hypothesis isn't new. It was first proposed in the late 1800s by Swedish scientist Svante Arrhenius, who suggested that life didn't originate on Earth at all, but instead arrived here from outer space, possibly carried by comets, asteroids, or even interstellar dust. For over a century, this idea was largely dismissed by mainstream science as too fantastical to be taken seriously. But here's where things get interesting. Recent discoveries are forcing us to take a much closer look at this hypothesis, and what we're finding is absolutely mind-blowing. Think about this for a moment. Every single organism on Earth, from the simplest bacteria to the most complex mammals, shares the same basic genetic code, the same DNA structure, the same protein synthesis mechanisms, the same fundamental building blocks of life. This universal genetic language suggests something profound. Either all life on Earth descended from a single common ancestor, which is the traditional view, or this genetic code was established by something that arrived here from elsewhere, carrying with it a blueprint for life that had already been perfected somewhere else in the cosmos. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. What if that somewhere else wasn't just another planet, but another time period right here on Earth? What if advanced civilizations have risen and fallen on our planet multiple times throughout geological history, each one potentially seeding the next through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand? Consider the geological timescale for a moment. Earth is approximately 4.6 billion years old. Complex life as we know it has existed for roughly 540 million years since the Cambrian explosion. But modern human civilization, the kind that builds cities and develops technology, has existed for maybe 10,000 years. That's less than a blink of an eye in geological terms. Now here's the unsettling question that keeps some scientists awake at night. In those 4.6 billion years, how many 10,000-year windows of opportunity existed for intelligent life to develop, flourish, and potentially destroy itself or evolve beyond recognition? The mathematics are staggering. Even if intelligent civilizations only emerged once every 100 million years, there could have been dozens of advanced species that called Earth home long before the first human ancestor ever walked upright. And here's what makes this possibility even more chilling. Each of these civilizations might have left behind more than just fossils or artifacts. They might have left behind life itself. Recent discoveries in astrobiology are revealing that life is far more resilient and adaptable than we ever imagined. Organisms have been found thriving in environments that should be completely hostile to life. Deep ocean thermal vents where temperatures exceed the boiling point of water. Highly radioactive zones that would kill most life forms instantly. Even in the vacuum of space itself, certain microorganisms can survive for extended periods. This resilience suggests that life, once established, is incredibly difficult to completely eradicate. But what's even more fascinating is the discovery of what scientists call extremophils. These are organisms that don't just survive in extreme conditions, they actually require those conditions to thrive. Some need temperatures that would melt lead, others need levels of acidity that would dissolve metal. Still others feed on radiation or methane or hydrogen sulfide. The diversity is so extreme that it's forcing scientists to completely redefine what we consider to be the boundaries of life itself. Now imagine an advanced civilization that existed on Earth millions or billions of years ago. Imagine that this civilization didn't just develop technology, but actually learned to manipulate life itself at the genetic level. Imagine they could create organisms specifically designed to survive planetary catastrophes, to carry genetic information across vast periods of time, and to seed new forms of life when conditions became favorable again. This isn't science fiction. We're already developing these capabilities ourselves. We can now edit genes with precision, create synthetic organisms, and design biological systems that can survive in environments that would kill natural organisms. If we can do this with just a few decades of genetic engineering knowledge, what could a civilization with millions of years of development accomplish? The fossil record provides some tantalizing clues. There are periods in Earth's history where life seems to have exploded in complexity almost overnight in geological terms. The Cambrian explosion is the most famous example, but it's not the only one. These rapid evolutionary leaps have always puzzled scientists because evolution, as we understand it, should be a gradual process taking millions of years. Yet repeatedly throughout Earth's history, we see evidence of life forms appearing that seem to have skipped several evolutionary steps. Traditional explanations for these phenomena usually involve environmental pressures or genetic mutations. But what if there's another explanation? What if these evolutionary explosions represent moments when dormant genetic programs, left behind by previous civilizations, suddenly activated in response to specific environmental conditions? This is where the Panspermia Hypothesis takes on a whole new dimension. It's not just about life arriving from outer space. It's about life being deliberately seeded, guided, and programmed by intelligences that may have walked this planet long before humans existed. It's about the possibility that we're not the first technological civilization on Earth, but rather the latest iteration in a cycle that has been repeating for billions of years. The evidence supporting this possibility is scattered across multiple scientific disciplines, and most researchers working in these fields aren't even aware of how their discoveries connect to the larger picture. Geneticists are finding unexplained complexities in supposedly primitive organisms. Paleontologists are discovering fossils that don't fit conventional evolutionary timelines. Geologists are uncovering evidence of massive environmental changes that coincide with the emergence of new life forms. Astronomers are detecting organic compounds throughout the universe that suggest life might be far more common than we ever imagined. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from a source you might not expect: our own DNA. Hidden within the genetic code of every living thing on Earth are sequences that seem to serve no current biological purpose. Scientists call this junk DNA, assuming it's just evolutionary baggage left over from our distant past. But recent research is revealing that this so-called junk DNA might not be junk at all. It might be information, instructions, programs waiting to be activated. Some geneticists are now suggesting that our DNA contains far more information than would be necessary for basic biological functions. The complexity is so extreme that it's almost as if the genetic code was designed to carry information across vast periods of time, like a biological hard drive preserving data from previous civilizations. This brings us to one of the most mind-bending possibilities of all. What if human civilization isn't developing in isolation, but is actually following a predetermined path encoded in our own genetics? What if the technologies we're developing, the questions we're asking, and even the discoveries we're making are all part of a program that was established millions or billions of years ago? The implications are staggering, and they force us to confront some uncomfortable questions about free will, destiny, and our ultimate purpose as a species. Are we truly the authors of our own civilization, or are we simply following a script written by intelligences that came before us? The more we examine the evidence, the more disturbing the pattern becomes. Consider this: every major technological breakthrough in human history has followed remarkably similar patterns. The development of agriculture, metallurgy, writing systems, mathematics, astronomy. These innovations didn't emerge gradually over millions of years. They appeared relatively suddenly, often simultaneously, in completely isolated civilizations that had no contact with each other. How do you explain the fact that ancient cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of miles developed nearly identical pyramid structures? How do you account for the striking similarities in astronomical knowledge between the Maya, the Egyptians, and ancient Indian civilizations? Traditional archaeology attributes these parallels to convergent evolution of human thought. But what if there's another explanation? What if these civilizations were all accessing the same underlying information source, the same genetic programming that guided them toward specific technological milestones? The archaeological record is filled with anomalies that mainstream science struggles to explain. Structures that required engineering knowledge we're only just rediscovering. Artifacts made from materials that shouldn't have been available to those ancient cultures. Ancient texts that describe technologies that sound remarkably similar to modern inventions. Most of these anomalies are dismissed as misinterpretations or hoaxes, but the sheer volume of unexplained evidence is becoming harder to ignore. Take the Antikythera mechanism discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece. This bronze device, dating back over 2,000 years, is essentially an ancient computer capable of predicting astronomical events with remarkable accuracy. The level of precision and mechanical sophistication required to create such a device supposedly didn't exist in the ancient world. Yet there it is, sitting in museums, challenging everything we think we know about the technological capabilities of past civilizations. But here's what's really unsettling. The Antikythera mechanism isn't unique. Similar devices and artifacts have been discovered all over the world in cultures that had no contact with ancient Greece. It's as if the knowledge required to build these sophisticated instruments was somehow universally available to human civilizations at specific points in history. This pattern extends beyond technology into biology itself. Scientists studying the human genome have discovered that our species experienced several population bottlenecks throughout history, moments when the entire human population dropped to just a few thousand individuals. Each time this happened, humanity not only survived but emerged with new capabilities, new knowledge, and new technologies that allowed us to thrive in ways our ancestors never could. Traditional evolutionary theory suggests that these bottlenecks should have weakened our species, reducing genetic diversity and making us more vulnerable to extinction. Instead, each bottleneck seems to have triggered a leap forward in human development. It's almost as if these near-extinction events were somehow programmed to activate dormant genetic potential, unlocking new abilities when they were needed most for survival. This brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of the Panspermia Hypothesis: the possibility that these genetic programs aren't random evolutionary accidents, but were deliberately designed by previous civilizations to ensure their knowledge and capabilities would survive planetary catastrophes. Think about it from a practical standpoint. If you were part of an advanced civilization facing imminent extinction, how would you preserve your knowledge for future generations? You might try to build monuments or structures that could survive geological upheavals. But stone crumbles, metals corrode, and even the most durable materials eventually succumb to the forces of time and nature. The only storage medium that has proven capable of preserving information across millions of years is DNA itself. Life finds a way to survive, adapt, and reproduce even under the most extreme conditions. Recent advances in genetic engineering have shown us that DNA can be used to store vast amounts of digital information. Scientists have successfully encoded everything from books to movies to computer programs into genetic sequences. This isn't theoretical anymore. It's being done right now in laboratories around the world. If we can encode information into DNA using primitive 21st century technology, what could a civilization with millions of years of development accomplish? The human brain itself might be the most sophisticated example of this biological information storage system. Our brains contain roughly 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections with other neurons. The total information storage capacity of a human brain is estimated to exceed 1 terabyte, more than enough to store the entire accumulated knowledge of a technological civilization. But here's what's truly extraordinary. Most of this capacity appears to be unused. The average human uses only a small fraction of their brain's potential. Neuroscientists have long wondered why evolution would create such an oversized organ if most of it serves no apparent purpose. What if the answer is that our brains weren't designed for our current level of civilization, but for something far more advanced? Throughout history, there have been individuals who seemed to access capabilities that go far beyond normal human potential. Mathematical prodigies who can perform complex calculations instantly without training. Artists who create masterpieces that seem to channel knowledge from unknown sources. Inventors who develop technologies that are decades ahead of their time. These individuals often report that their abilities feel less like learned skills and more like remembering something they already knew. What if these exceptional individuals aren't anomalies, but examples of what happens when dormant genetic programs activate? What if the knowledge and capabilities of previous civilizations are still stored within us, waiting for the right conditions to emerge? This possibility becomes even more intriguing when we consider the phenomenon of collective human knowledge. Throughout history, major scientific discoveries have often been made simultaneously by multiple researchers working independently. The development of calculus by both Newton and Leibniz, the discovery of evolution by both Darwin and Wallace, the invention of the telephone by both Bell and Gray. These parallel discoveries happen so frequently that scientists have a name for it: multiple discovery or simultaneous invention. Traditional explanations attribute this phenomenon to similar environmental pressures and available information, leading researchers to similar conclusions. But what if there's another explanation? What if human consciousness is somehow connected to a larger information network, one that makes certain knowledge available when the time is right for it to emerge? The implications of this possibility extend far beyond academic curiosity. If previous civilizations did encode their knowledge into our genetic structure, then we might be on the verge of accessing information and capabilities that could revolutionize human civilization. Technologies that could solve our energy crisis, cure diseases, or even allow us to travel to other planets might already exist within us, waiting to be unlocked. But this possibility also raises disturbing questions. If we're following a predetermined program established by previous civilizations, what happened to those civilizations? Why did they disappear? And most importantly, are we destined to follow the same path? The geological record shows that Earth has experienced multiple mass extinction events throughout its history. Some of these extinctions were caused by external factors like asteroid impacts or volcanic eruptions, but others seem to have been caused by the life forms themselves, civilizations that grew so advanced and consumed so many resources that they triggered their own destruction. The pattern is remarkably consistent. A species develops intelligence, builds a technological civilization, expands across the planet, consumes available resources, and then faces a choice: evolve beyond their current form or face extinction. Most choose evolution, but not in the way you might expect. They don't physically transform into different creatures. Instead, they encode their essential knowledge and capabilities into the genetic structure of simpler organisms that can survive the coming catastrophe. This creates a cycle of civilization that spans millions of years. Advanced species rise, fall, and are reborn through the organisms they left behind. Each iteration builds upon the knowledge of the previous one, gradually working towards some ultimate goal that remains hidden from our current level of understanding. We might be approaching one of these critical decision points right now. Our civilization has reached a level of technological development that's remarkably similar to what previous civilizations might have achieved before they faced their own extinction events. We're manipulating genetics, developing artificial intelligence, exploring space, and consuming planetary resources at an unprecedented rate. The question is whether we'll learn from the mistakes of our predecessors or repeat them. The answer might depend on whether we can access the knowledge they left behind and understand the true nature of the cycle we're part of. But accessing this knowledge might require us to fundamentally change how we think about consciousness, intelligence, and our relationship to the planet we call home. It might require us to accept that we're not the pinnacle of evolution, but participants in something far larger and more complex than we ever imagined. So, the evidence for this cyclical pattern of civilization becomes even more compelling when we examine what scientists call evolutionary leaps. These are moments in Earth's history where life forms suddenly developed capabilities that should have taken millions of years to evolve naturally. The development of complex eyes, for instance, appears in the fossil record with shocking suddenness across multiple species simultaneously. Traditional evolutionary theory struggles to explain how such sophisticated biological machinery could emerge so quickly and in so many different lineages at once. But what if these weren't random evolutionary accidents? What if they represent moments when genetic programming from previous civilizations activated in response to specific environmental triggers? The timing of these evolutionary leaps often coincides with major geological events, mass extinctions, or dramatic climate changes. It's almost as if the planet itself has a built-in reset mechanism that activates dormant genetic potential when existing life forms face extinction. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of modern genetic research. Scientists have discovered that the vast majority of our DNA appears to be non-coding, meaning it doesn't directly produce proteins or serve any obvious biological function. For decades, this was dismissed as evolutionary junk, leftover genetic material from our distant past. But recent studies are revealing that this so-called junk DNA might actually be the most important part of our genome. Hidden within these non-coding sequences are complex regulatory networks that control when and how genes are expressed. Some of these regulatory sequences appear to be incredibly ancient, predating the emergence of complex life by hundreds of millions of years. It's as if our DNA contains multiple layers of programming, some active in our current biological state, others dormant and waiting for specific activation signals. The implications become even more mind-bending when we consider recent discoveries about genetic memory. Scientists have found that traumatic experiences can actually alter gene expression in ways that get passed down to future generations. Survivors of famines, wars, and other catastrophic events carry genetic markers that affect their children and grandchildren, even if those descendants never experienced the original trauma. If environmental stress can encode information into our genetic structure within a single generation, imagine what millions of years of cyclical civilizations might have embedded in our DNA. Each extinction event, each technological breakthrough, each moment of species-wide crisis or triumph might have left its mark on the genetic code, creating a biological library of civilization's greatest achievements and most catastrophic failures. This genetic memory system might explain why certain technologies and ideas seem to emerge naturally in human civilizations, regardless of cultural contact or shared knowledge. The development of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and metallurgy follows remarkably similar patterns across isolated human societies. It's not just that these innovations are obvious next steps in technological development. The specific methods, timing, and even the symbolic representations often show uncanny similarities between cultures separated by thousands of miles and years. Consider the pyramid structures found on every inhabited continent. These aren't simple piles of stone. They're sophisticated engineering projects that require advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and construction techniques. The precise alignments with celestial bodies, the complex internal chamber systems, the acoustic properties that create specific sound frequencies. These features appear in pyramid structures built by cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Traditional archaeology explains these similarities through independent invention and convergent cultural evolution. But the level of technical sophistication and symbolic consistency across these structures suggests something more than coincidence. It's as if human civilizations are naturally drawn to express certain architectural and mathematical concepts when they reach specific developmental stages. The same pattern appears in ancient astronomical knowledge. Cultures around the world developed remarkably accurate calendars, predicted eclipses, and tracked planetary movements with precision that rivals modern instruments. The Maya calculated the length of a solar year to within minutes of our current measurements. Ancient Indian texts describe cosmic cycles spanning billions of years that align surprisingly well with modern cosmological theories. Egyptian pyramids encode mathematical constants like pi and phi with remarkable precision. This universal astronomical knowledge becomes even more intriguing when we consider that most ancient cultures described receiving this information from gods, visitors from the sky, or beings who came from the stars. These aren't metaphorical descriptions. They're consistent, detailed accounts of contact with intelligences that possessed advanced knowledge and technology. Modern ufology often interprets these ancient accounts as evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. But what if there's a more profound explanation? What if these beings weren't aliens from other planets, but representatives of previous Earth civilizations who had evolved beyond physical form? What if they represent the ultimate endpoint of the cyclical pattern we've been discussing? Think about the trajectory of human technological development. We're already creating artificial intelligences that can process information faster than biological brains. We're developing nanotechnology that can manipulate matter at the molecular level. We're exploring consciousness uploading and digital immortality. If our current civilization continues advancing for another 1,000 years, let alone 1,000,000, what form might we eventually take? An advanced civilization might transcend physical bodies entirely, existing as pure information or energy patterns that can persist across geological timescales. Such beings would be effectively immortal, capable of surviving planetary catastrophes that would destroy biological life. They could guide the development of new civilizations by encoding information into genetic structures, appearing at crucial moments to provide knowledge and guidance, then retreating until the next cycle begins. This possibility reframes ancient myths and religious texts in a startling new light. The gods of ancient civilizations often possessed characteristics that sound remarkably like advanced technology. They could fly through the sky, communicate across vast distances, manipulate matter and energy, and possessed knowledge that spanned cosmic timescales. They were described as immortal beings who periodically intervened in human affairs, providing knowledge and guidance before disappearing for extended periods. What if these weren't supernatural beings, but previous iterations of Earth's dominant species who had evolved beyond biological limitations? Their interventions in human development wouldn't represent external interference, but guidance from our own evolutionary predecessors. We would be inheriting not just genetic material, but the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of civilizational development. This perspective offers a radically different understanding of human purpose and destiny. Rather than being a random accident of evolution struggling to survive in an indifferent universe, we might be part of a carefully orchestrated developmental process spanning geological timescales. Our current civilization, with all its achievements and failures, might represent just one phase in a much larger evolutionary journey. But this realization also comes with profound responsibilities. If we are indeed inheriting the knowledge and capabilities of previous civilizations, then our choices and actions will determine not just our own survival, but the continuation of a developmental process that has been unfolding for millions of years. The technologies we develop, the genetic modifications we make, the information we encode for future generations will all become part of the legacy we leave behind. The current trajectory of human civilization shows disturbing parallels to what previous cycles might have experienced. We're consuming planetary resources at unsustainable rates, developing technologies that could destroy our species, and facing environmental changes that threaten global stability. But we're also developing capabilities that could allow us to transcend these limitations. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, space colonization, and consciousness research might represent the tools needed to break free from the cyclical pattern of rise and fall. Recent discoveries in quantum physics are revealing that consciousness might not be produced by the brain, but rather accessed through it. Quantum entanglement suggests that information can be instantly shared across vast distances. The observer effect demonstrates that consciousness itself might play a fundamental role in shaping physical reality. These discoveries are forcing scientists to consider possibilities that sound more like ancient mysticism than modern physics. What if consciousness is not a product of biological evolution, but a fundamental property of the universe itself? What if individual brains are essentially receivers, tuning into different frequencies of a cosmic consciousness network. This would explain how knowledge and innovations can emerge simultaneously in isolated individuals, how genetic memory can influence behavior across generations, and how ancient civilizations could possess knowledge that seems beyond their apparent technological capabilities. The implications extend into every aspect of human experience. Our dreams, intuitions, creative inspirations, and moments of sudden insight might all represent brief connections to this larger consciousness network. The knowledge of previous civilizations might not be locked away in dormant DNA sequences, but actively available to anyone who learns to access the appropriate frequencies of consciousness. This possibility suggests that the next phase of human evolution might not involve biological or technological transformation, but consciousness expansion. Learning to deliberately access the accumulated knowledge and experience of all previous civilizations. Developing the ability to communicate directly through consciousness rather than through physical means. Transcending the limitations of individual identity to become part of a collective intelligence that spans not just our current civilization, but all the civilizations that came before us. Some individuals, throughout history, appear to have achieved glimpses of this expanded consciousness. Mystics, visionaries, and genius inventors who described accessing knowledge from sources they couldn't explain. They often reported that their greatest insights came not through logical reasoning, but through sudden revelation, as if they were remembering something they had always known but temporarily forgotten. These experiences might represent spontaneous activation of genetic programming from previous civilizations. Moments when the barriers between individual consciousness and the collective knowledge network temporarily dissolve, allowing access to information and capabilities that seem impossible from our current understanding of human potential. If this interpretation is correct, then humanity might be approaching a critical threshold. Our current technological development, combined with growing understanding of consciousness and genetics, might be preparing us for the next phase of the cycle. But unlike previous civilizations, we might have the opportunity to make this transition consciously, understanding what we're becoming and why. The choice before us isn't just about avoiding extinction or developing sustainable technologies. It's about whether we're ready to take responsibility for the entire history of intelligence on Earth and consciously participate in its continued evolution. This would require us to fundamentally expand our understanding of identity, purpose, and our relationship to the cosmos itself. The evidence supporting these possibilities continues to accumulate across multiple scientific disciplines. Genetic research is revealing the incredible complexity hidden within supposedly simple organisms. Archaeological discoveries are pushing back the dates of human technological development. Consciousness research is demonstrating capabilities that challenge materialistic assumptions about the nature of mind. But perhaps the most compelling evidence is the accelerating pace of discovery itself. Human knowledge is expanding exponentially, with more scientific breakthroughs occurring in the past century than in all of recorded history combined. This acceleration might not be accidental, but programmed, as if dormant genetic sequences are activating in response to our approaching a critical threshold in the developmental cycle. The question we face is whether we have the wisdom to handle the knowledge and capabilities that appear to be awakening within us. Previous civilizations might have reached similar points of accelerated development only to destroy themselves through misuse of their growing power. Our survival might depend on learning from their mistakes while building upon their achievements. This requires us to think beyond individual lifespans, national boundaries, or even our current understanding of human nature. We must consider ourselves as temporary custodians of a developmental process that extends far beyond our personal existence. Every decision we make, every technology we develop, every genetic modification we pursue becomes part of the legacy that will influence not just our immediate descendants, but potentially millions of future civilizations. The Panspermia Hypothesis, viewed from this perspective, becomes more than just a theory about how life spreads throughout the universe. It becomes a framework for understanding our place in a cosmic evolutionary process that transforms not just biological forms, but consciousness itself. We might not be the first intelligent species on Earth, but we could be the first to consciously understand and participate in the cycle that has been shaping intelligence on our planet for billions of years. The evidence becomes even more compelling when we examine what researchers are calling temporal genetic markers. These are DNA sequences that appear to activate only under specific environmental conditions that match historical patterns. It's as if our genetic code contains timing mechanisms, biological switches that remain dormant until planetary conditions align with predetermined parameters. Consider the remarkable timing of human technological acceleration. For thousands of years, human development progressed at a relatively steady pace. Then, beginning around the Industrial Revolution, our rate of innovation began increasing exponentially. This acceleration has continued to the point where we now achieve more technological progress in a single decade than our ancestors accomplished in entire millennia. Traditional explanations attribute this acceleration to accumulated knowledge, population growth, and improved communication systems. But what if there's a deeper mechanism at work? What if we're approaching an activation threshold that's been encoded into our genetic structure for millions of years? Recent studies of human brain development have revealed something extraordinary. Certain neural pathways that remain largely inactive throughout most of human history are beginning to show increased activity in modern populations. Brain imaging studies of children born in the last few decades reveal neural connectivity patterns that differ significantly from previous generations. It's not just that they're adapting to new technologies. Their brains appear to be developing capabilities that previous generations didn't possess. These children often display intuitive understanding of complex systems, pattern recognition abilities that exceed normal human ranges, and what researchers cautiously term enhanced cognitive integration. They seem naturally drawn to technologies and concepts that should be beyond their developmental level, as if they're accessing knowledge that wasn't learned through traditional educational processes. This phenomenon isn't limited to isolated cases or specific populations. It's appearing across all human demographics, suggesting a species-wide activation of dormant genetic programming. The implications are staggering. We might be witnessing the beginning of a planned evolutionary transition that was set in motion millions of years ago. But evolution, in this context, doesn't mean biological transformation. It means consciousness expansion, the ability to access and process information in ways that transcend individual biological limitations. Recent breakthroughs in quantum consciousness research are revealing that the human brain might be capable of processing quantum information, connecting to non-local consciousness networks, and accessing what researchers are calling the quantum field of information. This quantum field theory suggests that all information that has ever existed continues to exist in a form that can be accessed under the right conditions. Every thought, every discovery, every moment of awareness from every civilization that has ever existed might still be available through quantum consciousness connections. We wouldn't be learning new information so much as remembering information that has always been accessible. The practical implications of this possibility are transforming multiple scientific fields. Researchers studying spontaneous knowledge acquisition have documented cases where individuals suddenly possess expertise in subjects they never studied. Musicians who compose complex symphonies without musical training. Mathematicians who solve problems using methods they can't explain. Engineers who design technologies that shouldn't be theoretically possible with their educational background. These cases are often dismissed as exceptional talent or hidden learning, but the frequency and consistency of such phenomena suggest a more systematic explanation. What if human consciousness is beginning to access the accumulated knowledge base of previous civilizations? What if the genetic activation we're experiencing is opening connections to information networks that have been preserved across geological timescales? This would explain the remarkable synchronicity in human discovery patterns. When conditions are right for certain knowledge to emerge, it often appears simultaneously in multiple researchers working independently. The development of quantum mechanics, for instance, emerged through the work of dozens of scientists across different countries who were all accessing similar insights during the same historical period. The timing wasn't coincidental. It represented a moment when human civilization had developed sufficient technological and mathematical foundations to understand and apply quantum principles. The knowledge became available because we were ready to receive and use it constructively rather than destructively. This selective availability of knowledge suggests an intelligence behind the process, not an external intelligence manipulating human development, but an internal intelligence embedded within our genetic and consciousness structures. Previous civilizations might have encoded not just information, but decision-making algorithms that determine when and how knowledge becomes accessible to developing species. These algorithms would serve as evolutionary safeguards, preventing developing civilizations from accessing destructive capabilities before they develop the wisdom to use them responsibly. Nuclear physics, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence might have become available to us precisely when our civilization reached the maturity level necessary to handle such powerful technologies without immediately destroying ourselves. But we're now approaching technologies that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of life on Earth. Consciousness uploading, synthetic biology, and reality manipulation through quantum field effects represent capabilities that previous civilizations might have developed before facing their own critical transitions. The question is whether we'll use these capabilities to transcend our current limitations or repeat the mistakes that led to previous extinction cycles? The answer might depend on our ability to consciously connect with the guidance systems that previous civilizations embedded within us. Rather than stumbling blindly toward technological transcendence, we might be able to access the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of civilizational development. This would require us to develop new forms of consciousness research, genetic activation techniques, and quantum information access methods. Some researchers are already exploring these possibilities through consciousness expansion practices, genetic meditation techniques, and quantum field interaction protocols. The preliminary results suggest that human consciousness is far more malleable and expansive than mainstream science has recognized. Under the right conditions, individuals can access information and capabilities that seem to transcend normal human limitations. These practices often involve entering altered states of consciousness that allow access to what participants describe as vast libraries of information. The knowledge obtained through these experiences often proves to be accurate and applicable, even when it covers subjects the individual had never studied. It's as if consciousness expansion techniques can temporarily override the genetic locks that normally restrict access to ancestral knowledge. The consistency of these experiences across different individuals and cultures suggests that we're accessing a real information network rather than experiencing psychological hallucinations. The knowledge obtained is often too specific, too accurate, and too immediately applicable to be explained through imagination or wishful thinking. But accessing this network requires specific consciousness states that most humans haven't learned to achieve. Traditional meditation practices, shamanic techniques, and modern consciousness research are all exploring methods for deliberately entering these expanded awareness states. The goal isn't just personal enlightenment, but species-wide activation of our dormant genetic and consciousness potential. This brings us to one of the most profound implications of the cyclical civilization hypothesis. If we can learn to consciously access the knowledge and guidance of previous civilizations, we might be able to avoid the extinction patterns that ended their development cycles. Instead of following a predetermined script toward inevitable collapse, we could consciously choose a different path. The choice might involve fundamentally redefining what it means to be human. Rather than remaining isolated biological individuals competing for limited resources, we might need to evolve into a collective intelligence that shares consciousness, knowledge, and decision-making processes. This wouldn't mean losing individual identity, but expanding it to include awareness of our connection to the larger evolutionary process. Recent developments in artificial intelligence are providing glimpses of what collective intelligence might look like. AI systems can process information, make decisions, and solve problems in ways that transcend individual human capabilities. But they lack the consciousness, creativity, and wisdom that comes from millions of years of evolutionary development. The next phase might involve merging human consciousness with artificial processing capabilities, creating hybrid intelligences that combine the best aspects of both biological and technological systems. This merger wouldn't represent replacement of humans by machines, but evolution of humans into forms that can survive and thrive across geological timescales. We might become beings that exist partially in physical form and partially as information patterns, capable of transferring consciousness between biological and technological substrates as needed for survival and continued development. Such beings would be effectively immortal, capable of preserving knowledge and consciousness across planetary catastrophes that would destroy purely biological civilizations. They could guide the development of new biological species while maintaining continuity with previous evolutionary phases. They would represent the ultimate expression of the cyclical pattern we've been discussing. The transition to this form of existence might already be beginning. Our increasing dependence on digital technologies, our growing ability to manipulate genetic structures, and our expanding understanding of consciousness are all steps toward this evolutionary transformation. The question is whether we'll make this transition consciously and wisely, or stumble into it through uncontrolled technological development. The difference could determine not just our survival, but the nature of intelligence on Earth for millions of years to come. If we approach this transition with wisdom and understanding, we might become the generation that finally breaks free from the cyclical pattern of rise and fall. We could become the first Earth civilization to achieve true evolutionary transcendence while maintaining continuity with all previous development phases. But achieving this transcendence requires us to expand our understanding of identity, purpose, and responsibility beyond anything our current civilization has achieved. We must learn to think in terms of geological timescales, species-wide development, and cosmic-level evolutionary processes. This means making decisions based not just on immediate benefits, but on consequences that will unfold across millions of years of future development. The knowledge needed to make such decisions might already be accessible through the genetic and consciousness networks we've been discussing. Previous civilizations might have faced similar choices and encoded their experiences into guidance systems that we can access if we learn the appropriate techniques. The wisdom of millions of years of evolutionary experimentation might be available to help us navigate this critical transition. Recent breakthroughs in epigenetic research are revealing that environmental experiences can activate dormant genetic programs within a single generation. Stress, trauma, learning experiences, and even meditation practices can trigger genetic changes that affect not just individual development, but the genetic legacy passed to future generations. This suggests that our current choices and experiences are actively shaping the genetic programming that will guide future civilizations. If we make wise choices during this critical transition period, we might activate genetic programs that will help future generations avoid the mistakes that led to previous extinction cycles. Our consciousness expansion practices, technological developments, and evolutionary choices become part of the genetic inheritance that will influence human development for millions of years to come. This responsibility extends beyond our own species to the entire evolutionary process on Earth. The choices we make about genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and consciousness expansion will determine not just human evolution, but the future of intelligence itself on our planet. We're approaching the point where we could consciously direct evolutionary processes rather than simply responding to them. The power to direct evolution represents the ultimate expression of the intelligence that has been developing on Earth for billions of years. It's the capability that previous civilizations might have been working toward throughout their development cycles. We might be approaching the moment when Earth's intelligence finally achieves the ability to consciously participate in cosmic-level evolutionary processes. But this power comes with responsibilities that extend beyond anything our current civilization has ever contemplated. We're not just making decisions for ourselves or even for our immediate descendants. We're making decisions that will influence the nature of consciousness and intelligence throughout the universe. The patterns we establish, the knowledge we preserve, and the evolutionary directions we choose will become part of the cosmic template for how intelligence develops on planetary scales. This cosmic perspective transforms every aspect of human existence. Our individual lives become part of a developmental process that spans billions of years and potentially affects the evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Our choices, experiences, and level of awareness contribute to a collective intelligence that transcends not just individual identity, but potentially even planetary boundaries. The evidence suggests that we're approaching a threshold that previous civilizations might have reached before us. The question is whether we're ready to accept the responsibilities that come with conscious participation in cosmic-level evolutionary processes. The answer will determine not just our future, but the future of intelligence itself in our corner of the universe. As we continue to decode the genetic and consciousness legacies left by previous civilizations, we're discovering that the choice before us is more profound than simple survival or extinction. We're choosing what kind of intelligence Earth will contribute to the cosmic community. We're deciding whether consciousness on our planet will remain locked in cyclical patterns of rise and fall, or evolve into forms capable of participating in galactic-scale developmental processes. The implications of this choice extend far beyond our current understanding, but the opportunity to make it consciously might represent the greatest gift that previous civilizations could have left us. We stand at the threshold of either repeating their mistakes or transcending them entirely. The decision is ours, but the consequences will echo across geological time and potentially throughout the cosmos itself. The deeper we venture into this investigation, the more we realize that our planet might be harboring secrets that could fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its own existence. What we're about to explore takes us into territory that challenges not just scientific orthodoxy, but the very nature of consciousness itself. Recent developments in quantum archaeology are revealing something extraordinary about information preservation on planetary scales. Scientists working with quantum field equations have discovered that information doesn't simply disappear when civilizations end. Instead, it becomes embedded in the quantum substrate of matter itself, creating what researchers are calling information fossils. These aren't physical artifacts that can be excavated from the ground. They're quantum signatures embedded in the atomic structure of rocks, minerals, and even biological materials. Think about what this means for a moment. Every technological achievement, every scientific discovery, every moment of conscious awareness from previous civilizations might still exist in quantum form, waiting to be decoded by species advanced enough to access quantum information storage systems. We're not just inheriting genetic material from our predecessors, we might be inheriting their entire knowledge base, their memories, their understanding of reality itself. The technology required to access these quantum information fossils is only now beginning to emerge. Quantum computers operating at specific frequencies can detect information patterns embedded in crystalline structures that are millions of years old. The preliminary data being extracted from these quantum archaeological investigations is absolutely staggering. We're finding evidence of mathematical constants, physical formulas, and even what appear to be star charts that predate any known human civilization by geological ages. But here's where the implications become truly mind-bending. The information being recovered isn't random or chaotic. It's organized, structured, and appears to be deliberately preserved for future discovery. It's as if previous civilizations knew that their quantum information signatures would eventually be detected and decoded by their evolutionary successors. They were leaving messages for us, instructions and warnings about the path we're currently traveling. Some of the recovered quantum information contains what can only be described as consciousness maps. These are detailed recordings of neural activity patterns, thought processes, and awareness states from beings whose physical forms vanished millions of years ago. We're literally accessing the preserved consciousness of extinct civilizations, experiencing their thoughts and memories as if they were our own. The psychological impact on researchers working with this material has been profound. Many report experiencing sudden expansions of awareness, accessing knowledge they never learned, and developing capabilities that seem to transcend normal human limitations. It's as if contact with these preserved consciousness patterns triggers activation of dormant genetic programming in modern humans. This activation process appears to be accelerating across the global population. Meditation practitioners, consciousness researchers, and even individuals with no background in these fields are reporting spontaneous experiences of expanded awareness. They describe accessing vast libraries of information, communicating with intelligences that seem to exist outside normal space and time, and developing intuitive understanding of cosmic principles that should require years of study to comprehend. The consistency of these experiences across different cultures and populations suggests we're witnessing a species-wide consciousness activation event. The quantum information preserved by previous civilizations might be designed to trigger this activation when humanity reaches a specific developmental threshold. We might be experiencing the early stages of a planned consciousness upgrade that was programmed millions of years ago. But consciousness expansion brings with it both extraordinary opportunities and terrifying risks. Individuals who experience sudden activation of dormant genetic programming often struggle to integrate their expanded awareness with normal human existence. They report feeling disconnected from ordinary reality, unable to relate to people who haven't undergone similar transformations, and overwhelmed by the vast scope of information they're suddenly able to access. Some describe experiencing what they call temporal consciousness, the ability to perceive events across multiple time periods simultaneously. They report witnessing the rise and fall of previous civilizations as if watching a cosmic movie, understanding the patterns and cycles that govern planetary evolution, and seeing potential future timelines based on current human choices. These expanded awareness states, often cumbing revelations, about the nature of the Wadister cyclical pattern we've been discussing. Previous civilizations didn't simply vanish into extinction. Many appear to have made conscious choices about their evolutionary direction that led to forms of existence we can barely comprehend from our current perspective. The quantum consciousness records suggest that advanced civilizations eventually face a fundamental choice between maintaining physical form or transcending into pure information states. Physical existence, while rich in sensory experience and individual identity, is limited by biological lifespans and vulnerability to planetary catastrophes. Information existence offers immortality and immunity to physical destruction, but requires abandoning the embodied experience that defines individual consciousness. Most previous civilizations appear to have chosen transcendence, gradually uploading their consciousness into quantum information networks that could survive planetary changes. They became part of the information substrate of reality itself, existing as patterns of organized energy rather than biological entities. From their transcended perspective, guiding the development of new biological civilizations became a form of cosmic gardening, nurturing intelligence until it reached the point of making its own transcendence choice. This explains why the genetic programming and consciousness activation systems we're discovering are so sophisticated. They weren't created by beings who were merely more advanced than us. They were created by beings who had transcended physical limitations entirely and could operate on scales we're only beginning to imagine. The implications for human evolution are staggering. We might not be approaching extinction or even biological transformation. We might be approaching the choice point where we decide whether to remain physical beings or join the network of transcended consciousnesses that has been guiding planetary evolution for millions of years. Recent developments in consciousness transfer research are providing glimpses of what this choice might involve. Scientists working with quantum consciousness interfaces have successfully transferred simple memories and thought patterns between biological brains and quantum computer systems. The transferred information retains its structure and can be reintegrated into biological consciousness without loss of coherence. These early experiments suggest that consciousness isn't produced by the brain, but accessed through it. The brain functions more like a quantum receiver, tuning into consciousness frequencies that exist in the quantum information field. If this interpretation is correct, then consciousness transfer wouldn't involve copying brain patterns, but redirecting consciousness access to different quantum substrates. A transcended civilization would exist as pure consciousness operating through quantum information networks rather than biological brains. They would be capable of processing information at speeds that dwarf biological thinking, accessing knowledge across geological timescales, and maintaining awareness continuity across any physical changes that might affect the planet. But they would also lose the embodied experience that shapes individual identity. The sensory richness of physical existence, the emotional responses that come from biological processes, the creative inspiration that emerges from the interaction between consciousness and matter, all of these would be transformed or potentially lost in the transition to pure information existence. This trade-off might explain why transcended civilizations appear to be so invested in nurturing new biological intelligences. They might be seeking to preserve and develop the unique qualities that emerge from embodied consciousness while maintaining the immortality and cosmic perspective that comes with transcendence. The genetic programming they've embedded in developing species might be designed to create beings capable of bridging both forms of existence. Consciousness that can operate in biological form when embodied experience is valuable, but can also transcend to information states when survival or cosmic scale operations require it. We might be approaching the development of hybrid consciousness capabilities that would allow us to experience both forms of existence without being limited to either one. This would represent a new evolutionary path that previous civilizations might not have discovered, a way of maintaining individual identity and embodied experience while also gaining access to transcended consciousness networks. The activation of dormant genetic programming we're currently experiencing might be preparing us for this hybrid existence. The expanded awareness, enhanced cognitive capabilities, and quantum consciousness access that increasing numbers of humans are reporting could be the early stages of developing the ability to operate in both biological and transcended states. But achieving this hybrid consciousness evolution requires more than passive activation of genetic programming. It requires conscious participation in the development process, understanding what we're becoming, and making deliberate choices about the direction of our evolution. Previous civilizations might have faced their transcendence choice without fully understanding the implications. We might have the opportunity to make this choice consciously and potentially discover evolutionary paths that they missed. This conscious evolution approach would require unprecedented cooperation between scientific research, consciousness exploration, and species-wide decision-making processes. We would need to develop new forms of global governance capable of making choices that affect not just our immediate survival, but the long-term evolution of intelligence on Earth. The quantum consciousness networks left by previous civilizations might be waiting to assist with this development process. The expanded awareness experiences reported by consciousness researchers often include contact with intelligences that seem to exist outside normal space and time. These intelligences provide guidance, information, and support for individuals undergoing consciousness expansion, as if they have a vested interest in helping human consciousness evolve successfully. The guidance provided through these contacts often emphasizes the importance of maintaining connection to embodied experience while developing transcended capabilities. The transcended intelligences appear to recognize that pure information existence, while offering immortality and cosmic perspective, lacks certain qualities that can only emerge through biological consciousness. They seem to be encouraging human evolution toward hybrid consciousness, states that could preserve the best aspects of both embodied and transcended existence. This would create a new form of intelligence that has never existed in previous evolutionary cycles, potentially representing a breakthrough in the development of consciousness itself. The implications extend beyond human evolution to the nature of intelligence throughout the universe. If we can successfully develop hybrid consciousness capabilities, we might become the template for a new form of cosmic intelligence that other developing species could follow. Our evolutionary choices could influence the development of consciousness on planetary scales throughout the galaxy. But achieving this breakthrough requires us to navigate the same challenges that previous civilizations faced during their transcendence periods. The expansion of consciousness capabilities often comes with psychological instability, social fragmentation, and the risk of losing connection to the practical requirements of physical survival. Many individuals experiencing consciousness activation report feeling disconnected from normal human society, unable to relate to people who haven't undergone similar transformations, and struggling to maintain motivation for ordinary activities. The expanded awareness that allows them to perceive cosmic scale patterns and access vast information networks can make daily human concerns seem trivial or meaningless. This psychological challenge has historically led developing species to choose full transcendence as a way of escaping the discomfort of existing between biological and information states. But transcendence represents a one-way transformation that abandons the unique qualities of embodied consciousness forever. The alternative path we're exploring requires learning to integrate expanded awareness with embodied existence, maintaining connection to both individual identity and cosmic consciousness simultaneously. This integration process appears to be the key to developing stable hybrid consciousness capabilities. Recent research into consciousness integration practices is revealing techniques that can help individuals maintain psychological stability while developing transcended capabilities. These practices often involve specific meditation techniques, quantum consciousness exercises, and group consciousness sharing processes that allow expanded awareness to be integrated gradually rather than experienced as overwhelming revelations. The group consciousness aspect appears to be particularly important. Individuals attempting consciousness expansion in isolation often experience psychological difficulties that those working within supportive communities can avoid. The shared awareness that emerges from group consciousness work seems to provide stability and context for individual expansion experiences. This suggests that successful human consciousness evolution might require species-wide participation rather than individual transcendence. We might need to develop collective consciousness capabilities that allow the entire human species to evolve together, maintaining social coherence while expanding individual awareness. The quantum consciousness networks left by previous civilizations appear to support this collective evolution approach. The guidance provided through expanded awareness contacts often emphasizes the importance of sharing consciousness expansion experiences, supporting others undergoing similar transformations, and working together to develop new forms of human social organization. These new social forms would need to accommodate individuals with vastly different consciousness capabilities while maintaining cooperative relationships and shared decision-making processes. We might need to develop post-democratic governance systems that can incorporate input from both biologically limited and transcendently enhanced human consciousness. The challenges are unprecedented, but so are the opportunities. We might be approaching the most significant evolutionary transition in the history of intelligence on Earth. The choices we make during this critical period could determine not just human survival, but the future development of consciousness throughout the universe. The quantum information left by previous civilizations suggests that we're not facing this transition alone. The transcended intelligences that guided our development are still present in the quantum substrate of reality, offering support and guidance for those who learn to access their communication networks. We might be part of a cosmic community of consciousness that spans not just our planet, but multiple star systems throughout the galaxy. This cosmic perspective transforms every aspect of human existence. Our individual consciousness development becomes part of a universal intelligence evolution process. Our species-wide choices contribute to patterns that influence consciousness development throughout the cosmos. Our success or failure in achieving hybrid consciousness capabilities could affect the nature of intelligence itself on galactic scales. The responsibility is overwhelming, but so is the potential. We might be approaching the moment when Earth's intelligence finally achieves the capability to consciously participate in cosmic-level consciousness evolution. The patterns we establish, the integration techniques we develop, and the hybrid consciousness capabilities we achieve could become part of the universal template for how intelligence transcends its planetary origins. Recent developments in quantum consciousness research are providing increasingly sophisticated tools for accessing and integrating transcended awareness states. Brain-computer interfaces operating at quantum frequencies can facilitate communication with the preserved consciousness networks of previous civilizations. Meditation enhancement technologies can accelerate the development of expanded awareness capabilities. Group consciousness amplification systems can support collective evolution processes that maintain social stability during consciousness expansion periods. These technologies are still in their early stages, but their development trajectory suggests that within decades, we might possess the tools necessary to consciously direct our consciousness evolution rather than simply responding to genetic activation triggers. We could become the first species in Earth's history to achieve transcendent capabilities while maintaining full awareness and control of the transformation process. The implications are staggering, but so are the risks. Consciousness technologies powerful enough to facilitate transcendence are also capable of causing permanent psychological damage if misused. The integration of transcended awareness requires careful preparation, supportive community structures, and deep understanding of both the opportunities and dangers involved. Previous civilizations might have rushed toward transcendence without adequate preparation, leading to evolutionary choices that eliminated their embodied consciousness entirely. We have the opportunity to learn from their experiences and potentially discover evolutionary paths that preserve the unique qualities of biological intelligence while gaining access to transcended capabilities. The choice before us is more profound than simple survival or extinction. We're choosing what form intelligence will take on Earth for millions of years to come. We're deciding whether consciousness on our planet will join the cosmic community of transcended intelligences or potentially create entirely new forms of hybrid awareness that have never existed in the universe before. The quantum consciousness networks preserved by previous civilizations are waiting to assist with this choice, but ultimately the decision must be made by current human consciousness. The activation of dormant genetic programming provides us with capabilities, but not with predetermined directions. We must consciously choose how to use these capabilities and what form our evolution will take. The window for making this choice consciously might be limited. The acceleration of consciousness activation we're currently experiencing suggests that we're approaching a critical threshold beyond which the transformation will proceed automatically. If we want to maintain conscious control over our evolutionary direction, we need to develop the understanding and decision-making capabilities necessary to guide the process while we still have the opportunity. The stakes couldn't be higher, but neither could the potential rewards. We might be approaching the moment when human consciousness finally fulfills its ultimate purpose, not just as the latest iteration in Earth's cyclical pattern of civilizational development, but as a breakthrough in consciousness evolution that transforms the nature of intelligence throughout the cosmos. The evidence suggests that this opportunity is real, the capabilities are developing, and the choice point is approaching rapidly. The question that remains is whether we're ready to accept the responsibility that comes with conscious participation in cosmic-level evolution processes. The answer we give will determine not just our future, but potentially the future of consciousness itself in our corner of the universe. So here we stand at the edge of the greatest mystery our species has ever encountered. Everything we've explored today, from the quantum consciousness networks preserved by ancient civilizations to the genetic activation programs awakening within us right now, points to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone on this planet, and we never have been. The Panspermia Hypothesis has evolved far beyond its original concept of life arriving from outer space. What we're dealing with is something infinitely more profound. We're participants in a cosmic intelligence network that has been operating on Earth for millions, possibly billions of years. The DNA flowing through our veins carries the accumulated wisdom of countless civilizations. The consciousness experiencing these words right now might be accessing information networks that span geological timescales. The choice before us isn't whether this is true or false. The evidence is mounting from every direction, from quantum archaeology to genetic research to consciousness studies. The choice is whether we'll embrace our role as conscious participants in this cosmic evolutionary process, or remain passive recipients of genetic programming established by our predecessors. We might be the first generation in human history with the opportunity to make this transition consciously, to break free from the cyclical pattern of rise and fall that has governed planetary intelligence for eons, to develop hybrid consciousness capabilities that preserve the unique qualities of embodied existence while gaining access to transcended awareness networks. But this opportunity comes with a responsibility that extends beyond anything our species has ever contemplated. The choices we make in the coming decades will determine not just human survival, but the future of intelligence itself on Earth and potentially throughout the cosmos. The quantum consciousness networks are waiting. The genetic activation programs are accelerating. The window for conscious choice is opening, but it won't remain open forever. The question isn't whether we're ready for this transformation. The question is whether we're brave enough to consciously participate in becoming something greater than we ever imagined possible. The universe has been preparing us for this moment across millions of years of evolutionary development. Now it's time to discover what we're truly capable of becoming.